There is a version of you that has never been fully seen, not because it doesn't exist, but because somewhere along the way you decided it was safer to make yourself smaller. You learned to shrink your opinions in rooms where they weren't welcomed. You learned to soften your boundaries when the discomfort of holding them felt too expensive. You learned to perform a version of yourself that was palatable, agreeable, and easy to digest for people who never truly deserved access to the real you in the first place. And the exhaustion you feel right now, that low, persistent fatigue that lives beneath the surface of your daily life, is not from working too hard or sleeping too little. It is the exhaustion of the soul that has been quietly betrayed by the one person it trusted most, you. Marcus Aurelius once wrote that a man's life is what his thoughts make it. And if your thoughts have been shaped by the need to earn your place in every room, then you have been living someone else's life. Today changes that. These 5 Stoic lessons will teach you to protect your self-respect with the quiet, unshakable authority of someone who finally knows their own worth. Lesson 1 and 2, Control and Worth. The first lesson the Stoics offer is one that Epictetus, a man born into literal slavery, understood more deeply than most free men ever will. He taught that some things are within your control and others are not. Your opinions, your intentions, your choices, your responses, these belong to you entirely. The judgments of others, their moods, their approval, their acceptance, these were never yours to carry. The moment you began exhausting yourself trying to manage how other people perceived you, you handed over the steering wheel of your inner life to passengers who have no idea where you are going. You started negotiating your dignity for the temporary comfort of being liked. You started reshaping your voice so it wouldn't disturb the silence of people who were never truly listening. And each compromise, each moment of self-erasure, each time you swallowed a truth to preserve someone else's comfort, you moved further from the only compass that has ever been calibrated to your actual life, the one inside your chest. Reclaiming control doesn't mean controlling outcomes. It means returning your energy to the only territory that was ever genuinely yours, your character, your choices, and the invisible standard you hold yourself to when no one is watching. The second lesson follows naturally, and it is perhaps the most quietly devastating truth you will encounter today. Your worth is not something that can be awarded to you, and it is not something that can be revoked. Marcus Aurelius, writing in the solitude of his private journals with no audience in mind, reflected that a man's value does not increase because others praise him, nor does it diminish because others criticize him. His nature and capacity remain what they are. Ask yourself honestly, and sit with this question without rushing toward a comfortable answer. How much of your daily emotional energy is spent trying to make other people confirm something that was already true about you before they ever entered the room? The need for external validation is not a personality trait. It is a wound dressed up as a habit. Lesson 3, Standards and Boundaries. The third lesson is one that the modern world has deeply confused, and that confusion has cost countless people their self-respect in slow, almost invisible increments. People speak of boundaries as if they are walls you build to keep others out, as if they are aggressive declarations or defensive postures. But the Stoics would reframe this entirely. A boundary is not about the other person at all. It is an outward expression of an inward standard, and that standard is the living definition of who you are. Seneca warned that we suffer more in imagination than in reality, but he also understood that the man who has no standards suffers most of all, because he is ruled entirely by the shifting demands of his environment. When your standards are negotiable, when you bend them for comfort or to avoid conflict or to keep someone in your life who has repeatedly shown you they do not value your presence, you are not being flexible. You are being unfaithful to yourself. There is a crucial distinction that must be made here between compromising on logistics and compromising on character. You can adjust your schedule. You can change your plans. You can meet someone halfway on 100 practical matters and remain completely intact. But the moment you compromise on how you allow yourself to be spoken to, how you allow yourself to be treated, what you silently tolerate to maintain access to someone's approval, you have crossed a line that is remarkably difficult to find your way back from. Consistency is not rigidity. It is the daily act of honoring the person you have decided to become. Regardless of who is watching, regardless of who approves, and regardless of who chooses to walk away because your standards no longer serve their comfort. Lesson 4. Silence and social power. The fourth lesson will rearrange something fundamental in the way you move through the world, especially in the moments when you feel most provoked, most misunderstood, or most compelled to explain yourself. There is an almost biological impulse in human beings to respond, to justify, to clarify, to ensure that the other person understands your intentions. This impulse, while deeply human, is also one of the most reliable ways to surrender your power to someone who has not earned the right to hold it. Epictetus taught that between stimulus and response, there is a space, and it is in that space that freedom lives. Not the freedom to say everything you feel, but the freedom to choose whether your inner world gets exposed to someone who may not deserve that access. Silence, wielded with intention, is not weakness. It is not passivity. It is the most sophisticated form of psychological strength available to you, because it communicates something that words never can, that you are not governed by the need to be understood by everyone. When you stop rushing to explain yourself to people who have already decided how they feel about you, when you stop defending your character to those who are invested in misreading it, you reclaim an enormous amount of energy that was previously being spent on an unwinnable negotiation. Your silence becomes your boundary. Your calm becomes your authority. Your refusal to be pulled into reactive cycles becomes the clearest possible signal that you know who you are, and that knowledge does not require their confirmation. This is not about arrogance. It is about the quiet dignity of a person who has decided that their inner world is sacred, and that not every provocation deserves the gift of their reaction. Lesson 5. Walking away and identity close. The fifth and final lesson is the one most people avoid, because it asks the most of them emotionally. And it is this: sometimes protecting your self-respect means leaving. It means walking away from relationships, environments, and versions of yourself that were never truly aligned with your actual nature. And the guilt that follows that departure, the voice that tells you that you abandoned someone, that you were selfish, that you gave up too easily, that voice is not wisdom. It is a narrative constructed by years of conditioning that taught you to prioritize everyone else's comfort above your own wholeness. Loyalty is one of the most beautiful human qualities, but loyalty to a relationship that consistently requires you to be less than you are is not loyalty. It is self-neglect wearing loyalty's clothing. The Stoics did not advocate for coldness or detachment from human connection. What they advocated for, in the writings of Marcus, in the letters of Seneca, in the teachings of Epictetus, was the fierce protection of one's own rational soul. They understood that you cannot pour genuine presence into the world if you have been hollowing yourself out to fill the spaces that others refuse to occupy within themselves. Walking away, when walking away is the truthful and courageous choice, is not failure. It is the most honest declaration of self-respect you can make. You have now been given all 5 of these lessons, and together they form something larger than a list of strategies. They form an identity. The person who understands their control. The person who no longer outsources their worth. The person who lives by internal standards. The person whose silence carries authority. The person who chooses wholeness over hollow belonging. That person is not who you are becoming. That person is who you already are beneath everything you have been taught to perform. If something in this moved you today, leave a word in the comments that describes how it made you feel. And if this is the kind of awakening you want more of, stay close. Your transformation is only just beginning.